Welcome to Working Dogs and Whiskey. I'm Sean White. I'm here with my co host, Jonathan Moses, where we have open and honest conversations as we dive into the world of dog training.
Let me free your mind, your mind, your mind. Let me free your mind, your mind, your mind.
Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, what's going on, dude?
Not much. So, welcome to another episode. I think it's episode 2 now for
Episode
Working
2.
Dogs and Whiskey. So, we're slowly getting there. So, last episode, Jonathan, you did a lot of the interviewing portion of me and my history in dogs. So, now it's my turn to return the favor.
Thanks,
We get
man.
to talk about you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get the show on the road.
So just for everybody that's listening, we're kind of one and the same. We're very reserved in some attributes. So this is somewhat of a challenge, but we're working through it. So it'll be good.
Yeah.
No, so first off, man, just give us like a background, like how you got into dogs, what really solidified that point of you wanted to work with dogs rather as a career setting, if you will.
So I guess the moment where I decided I wanted to work with dogs. As a kid, I was always interested in dogs, different animals. Had everything: dwarf caimans, alligators, lizards, reptiles. One thing I couldn't have was a dog. So when I finally got my first dog, I did everything with him. Took him everywhere on the airplane. We took him out hunting in the woods. Anything I could try and get that dog to do, I did. And then, he was a Jack Russell, by the way. He was Snowflake. He was probably 17 pounds. But did everything with that dog. Watched every dog movie you could imagine, from Where the Red Fern Grows to to Homeward Bound. But as I started to look more and more into it, the one thing that really piqued my interest in dogs was bite work or protection. And as I got older, I came around about 17. I got my first Corso. That was the breed I really kind of got into dogs with. Happened to get a really nice dog, really lucked up. She's very prey driven, as opposed to what a lot of them can be, where they're a little bit more defensive. Got a job at Petco, just doing some general obedience on my own, practicing, trying things, running around the neighborhood, practicing on anybody who would give me their dog, trying to put obedience on it and just play around with it. Had no clue what I was doing at this point outside of YouTube videos and trial and error. Petco ended up giving me a job because my dog could at least hold it down and and listen around distractions and things like that.
Yeah.
And as that progressed, met a good friend of mine, Beaver, or William Beaver Boyce, who got me into protection sports. Went out to his place with that puppy. We started her out on the rag, and then he said, "Hey, you don't have to pay club dues if you're interested in getting in the bite suit." And after that, that's pretty much all she wrote.
Yeah. No, that's a good introduction. It's a peculiar one.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm gonna be honest. I want to know, like, how did you get away with having exotic animals over fucking dogs? Because
And they didn't eat every day.
that's
I was
not
playing.
common in America. Like, first thing is usually you go to a dog. Like, you can have that as long as you take care of it, and that's the traditional route in America. But I'm really interested on how you got away with. Would you say caiman? That's like a crocodile, right?
Yeah, it's like this crocodile is in the same family. I was being a smartass. I'd asked my dad for a puppy for Christmas, and he said no. I played AAU basketball and basketball year round pretty much. So we were constantly on the road traveling, and he's like, a dog is absolutely out of the question. And I came in because I saw someone had posted caimans for sale. I think it was Underground Reptiles or something like that. And I came in being a smartass. I'm like, "Oh, can I get this for Christmas?" He's like, "How often does it eat?" And I told him. He's like, "Yeah, that's fine. If it can go a couple days in between meals, go ahead and order it." And then that led into me ordering more and more exotic animals. And then they started to get to a certain size and kind of out of control. And he goes, "Hey, You still want that puppy? Get rid of these things.
Oh,
Find homes for him, and we'll go get you the dog.
that's awesome, dude. So you have like some negative reinforcement in there to fucking make him give
Yeah.
you a dog. That's
It
pretty
ended up
good.
coming back full circle, which was cool. And
Yeah,
I really lucked up with my first Corso too. Cousin who was breeding off of some really nice stuff. I don't even really think he knew what he had. One of the few PSA titled Corsos. She
shit.
was a granddaughter off of that. There's not a whole lot of them. And I got really lucky with the dog. I ended up with Tempest was her name. First working dog. Big learning curve there. She laid the groundwork for a lot of the future dogs that I got.
No, yeah, that definitely happens for sure. Uh, man, there's a lot with that story. I'm like, holy shit. I'm just trying to wrap my mind around having a fucking crocodile in my
Man.
house, and my parents would have flipped. Like, I came from a similar background. They would not let me have it. I didn't have a dog, let alone any foreign animals or exotic animals. But no, that's awesome, dude. So I know you mentioned meeting up with Beaver and all that. So how did that get you into, like, as far as training dogs or working with dogs? Because you had the Corso, obviously, as a pet, and then what kind of led you into like the pet side of training and maybe some of the sports side of it?
So at that point, I was already working at Petco with a buddy of mine who were still good friends, Calvin King. We were doing a lot of obedience. He had already ventured into some of the bite work and was still fairly new to it, but he had more experience with it than I had. And as at that point, I thought I was a good dog trainer. I'm like, oh no, we don't follow the Petco rules. My manager there actually allowed us to use prong collars and slip leads and pretty much anything we wanted. Not going to put her name or the store out there. Uh, but we were allowed to do whatever we wanted as long as when the district manager came in, we told all the clients, "Hey, prong collars off, e collars off." We'd hide everything, and they'd be like, "Wow, this is the best store we have. These are great, well trained dogs." I'm like, "Yeah, thank you." He'd leave, we put equipment back on. Uh, so I was already training the pet dogs, but like I said, we were both still fairly new into the bite work, and that's something that really piqued my interest. Because for me, it was all about working with the dog and giving them a job. So I ended up didn't even find Beaver. I was walking around the park at sunset with my Corso. Some guy stopped me from across the pond. He goes, "Oh, that's a nice dog." I said, "Yeah, I'm trying to, figure out how I can work her." And he goes, "Oh, there's some guy out in Sumter, South Carolina, who trains dogs." That's all he told me. And he gave me a name close to his kennel. It's Sandhill Kennel. He gave me some variation of that. Next thing I know, I'm on, Google, type it in. I find Beaver. I email him. And a month later, I'm out there with my Corso puppy working her on a rag. Next thing I know, I'm out there 3-4 days a week from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And we're in the bite suit. We're doing obedience. We're just working dogs every other day, all night. First time I went out there, my dad called me. He's like, "Hey, are you okay? You've been gone like 12 hours." I'm like, no, I'm good. Because, I pull up. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. This guy's got a long beard. It's in the middle of the woods, kind of hillbilly-esque look. And he's like, all right, just call me if everything's okay. And I told him at like 12 o'clock at night, he's like, are you sure you're good? Like, he's trying to give me code over the phone. I'm like, no, this is going well. Like, I like this. And over the next couple of years, we just really started doing more and more with dogs. And naturally, when you get into the working dogs, you find there's higher levels of drive. So people would come into Petco with, oh, my dog has this issue or that issue. But everything with working dogs is kind of in extremes. So I get to see extreme ends of drive and desire for certain things, which only made the pet dog training easier and vice versa. So as I got more comfortable doing that and said, oh, there's a lot I still don't know, but I was learning, I started to venture out more and more into training pet dogs and working dogs.
Dude, it gotta stop you. Only because you opened Pandora's box. And I don't even know if this is fucking legal, maybe. Maybe
Yeah.
this episode doesn't go out this way.
That'll be fine.
The Petco thing, man. The fucking using the tools.
Yeah,
Whatever.
absolutely, man.
I really want you to fucking go over that. Um, so, and this kind of navigates back to a pinpoint of where I wanted to go with as far as balanced training. But so how did that work? Like, what were the results that you found, as much as you're allowed to talk about? Because I know I have like certain training experiences from the military, in my end, that I can't like publicize like what happened. Not that dogs were being abused; it's just more of a strategic thing. Like we don't want to give the enemy like an advantage on how we train. So I'm limited on how I can speak about how we train in the military. But I'm I have no idea about Petco, like, so I don't know if we're doing
No, no,
something
it's all
bad
good.
by
I don't
talking
think they
about
can do anything to me at this point.
it. Okay,
Uh, so with Petco, they're a purely positive training company, and I'm in there with my Corso a couple days a week. I was trying to just get a lot of exposure and socialization. It was just a great testing ground for obedience. So I was in there all the time, just practicing and practicing.
right.
And the manager stops me. The manager and the assistant manager, they're like, "Hey, your dog's really well trained. Did you train her?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I've been doing everything on my own." I say, "Hey, we need a second trainer to help our other guy. Can you come in and help?" And I'm like, "Hey, look, I read the sign on the door. You guys are purely positive. I'm not about that." And she's like, "No, no, no. The other guy's not using purely positive stuff either. You can use the tools, pull out whatever you need. As long as the dogs are trained, we're meeting our quota. But if the district manager comes in, she's like, everybody's got to have collars off. She's like, any
Holy
prong
shit.
collars, anything like that." And we usually knew when he was coming. And it was so funny. Like, we could be having a group class going. And if someone spotted him that was working there, they'd run to the back and they'd tell us. And all the clients knew. We're like, "Oh, hey, take everything off, get them undressed." And dogs would just be in a downstay for a minute. And he'd come in, he's like, "Oh, man, these dogs are great. They behave really well." Calvin had a dog named Prince at the time. I was like, "That dog's fantastic." Prince was the most well-trained dog I'd ever seen, like by far. Uh,
Yeah,
and he was like, "Man, this is the best store. Like, you guys need to be leading the example. This is how it should be done." And then he'd leave, and we'd be like, "All right, suit him back up, put prong collars on, and we continue about our day." Uh, and it's weird because they're a purely positive store, and they were cheap. They're the worst prong collars on the planet. But they do sell prong collars in the store. But yeah, they just weren't allowed to be used for the training. We just didn't abide by that. So
fucking rebel, dude. I like it. We probably just lost a couple of potential viewers or listeners, rather.
nah, they'll
But
be all right,
whatever.
man.
We're trying to weed out who, you know,
Yeah.
people that actually understand the science of dog training. So that's cool. But that's insane. So you're like background, using balance training. And when I say balance, I'm referring to the use of pressure coupled with reward based system for those that are listening. So it's not completely unfair. He's not yoking up dogs and just
No,
whatever.
no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you won't get away with that, especially with different breeds that I would imagine that you train. But it's very systematic. But the prong collar provides a sense of reliability in the behavior. I do want to ask a question about, as far as the clients, like the dogs that you trained under that system with Petco. How did how did that go? Did they ever come back and complain, or was that
So no complaints really. I guess while we're putting it all out there, a lot of them would actually end up scheduling off the book in homes. Uh, so they might come in for like a couple lessons and be like, "Hey, I need a little bit more like 1-on-1." Because at Petco, they were encouraging like 5, 6 people, and we're probably in a 15 by 20 area, if that. And you got 5 dogs in there.
yeah?
So, a lot of them were happy. They were seeing results. Even if some of them came in with the mindset of, "Hey, I was here for purely positive," we talked to them and say, "Hey, maybe we start with a slip, with reward." But as they saw other dogs that had that layer of consequence or pressure added in, they said, "Okay, I see where that's consistent. how the dog responds to it, and that's probably more the route I want to go. So really no conflict there. I can't remember anybody who really stood out and like doubled down and was like, no, this is wrong. Nothing like that really.
That's awesome, dude. Hopefully we can put this out there because I know we keep saying Petco, and I'm just like, man,
I'll blurb it.
yeah, something, whatever. Yeah, it's good information though.
Oh yeah.
So, all right. So I got obsessed with the whole dog Petco thing, purely positive. I'm like, he's not a purely positive guy. Like we start
Never
out
have been.
positive for sure. But all right, that's interesting here. But going into now we're going back to full circle. You met Beaver, so you did the Petco part of it. And then now we're at the point where you met Beaver, the decoy that taught you how to do bite dogs. Was there any inclination of like sports or what direction you wanted to go as far as that setting?
So that is where I found out, bite sports were even a thing, or protection sports, right?
Right.
I hadn't heard it. At that point, you'd Google or YouTube something, and you'd find a video of a guy like teaching his dog to bite a tug. Like there
Mhm.
wasn't readily available information on it, unless you knew exactly what sport you were looking for, which I just didn't at the time. So they introduced him and Cher, introduced me a lot to different sports. Quickly within the first month of going there, I went from one Corso to a Corso and two American Bulldogs that they had bred. They've been breeding American Bulldogs for sports for the last 25 years. And phenomenal dogs. They were great dogs for me to get started with. And I joked that I had one at every tier, right? So Reacher was a good dog. He had the drive, but he's a little bit lazier. He would bite. He'd do certain things, but there were certain things he absolutely wasn't willing to do. And then I had Tempest. She had good drive. She wanted to work. She would go through certain things that made her uncomfortable. And then I had Diesel. Diesel was my American Bulldog who was completely over the top. Like, way more than I could handle at the time. Wish I'd done more with him. I just didn't know what to do. The only thing that was my saving grace was he had the best off switch I've ever seen in a dog. He'd sleep all day, he'd relax, he'd chill. But in drive, he was a monster. He couldn't swim, and I sent him across a shallow river one time, and he didn't hesitate. I mean, he hesitated when he hit the water because he didn't swim well. But to go get that bite, he was like, "All right, I got it." So those three dogs gave me a lot of experience, a lot of hands on, and it prepped me for sport. Actually, didn't end up trialing any of those dogs. Ended up going to the military at that time, in the Air Force to start working on jet engines. Was graduating high school, so a lot of things kind of happening in between that point. Shortly after that, I got my first titled German Shepherd that I brought over, or I got from a guy that he imported. And then shortly after that is when I got Apex. I'd been dealing with the, pre-mentioned dogs, Tempest, Reacher, Diesel. Thought I was ready for my first high drive German Shepherd. I purposely picked him. I had a choice between him and his brother. I was transporting back from Indiana. And I'm testing him. I'm doing all this stuff. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go with the more low key dog. I was so wrong. He grew up to be a fucking menace. I mean, he's got drive for days, and he just doesn't stop. And again, I kind of got another look at, there's more to this dog training thing that I still don't know.
Yeah.
And even at that point, I still hadn't picked a specific sport. He was so much dog, and he's more my learning dog. That I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I jumped around a lot, which was a detriment to us, but we've kind of learned from it. We got a couple titles now in National Working Dog Association, so hopefully we get this PDC in May. We'll see.
Okay. Yeah, right on. So you're on track with Apex to do a PDC is what we're looking at.
Yeah, he's looking pretty good. I've been kind of inconsistent with him here recently. Like
Okay.
I said, he's a really good dog, and I mean you know him well. We've done a lot of work with that
Yeah.
dog. There's
Yeah,
a
I'm
lot of
trying to
stuff I'm
pretend
going
like I
back.
don't know him, but I'm like, yeah,
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 motherfucker's a menace. But there's just a lot of things I didn't. I encouraged a lot of biting and kept the control portion very separate. And then at the time in my head, I was like, oh, I'm just going to tell him to do this to go get the bike today. The way that motherfucker looked at me, it was like, get the fuck out of here and go send me like you've sent me 1,000 times before. So that was a realization where I was like, oh, I think there's more of a building process to this. And we got there. It just took some time.
yeah, for sure. So I want to go into it's mainly for the audience if we're being completely transparent and just trying to have an organic conversation. But what got you into the dog training industry? Because I know you have your own business. When I met you, you had all of that, and so please just elaborate like how you got into actually having a facilitation for dogs and all that, and being able to do some of the pet stuff that you've been able to do.
So, so like I said, I always kind of had that passion for animals and then dogs especially. And one thing I knew from the time I was about 11 was I wasn't working for anybody else. I purposely went to the military just to kind of expedite my experience having to work for someone else. 'Cause my dad always told me you couldn't be a good boss if you didn't have a boss or multiple bosses and a lot of discipline. And my dad kept us very disciplined growing up, that's for sure. But the military kind of expedited that process. Uh, so with that being said, I figured why not do the one thing I get up and think about all day, every day? The one thing I want to do nonstop. That's what I want to focus on. So dogs for me were something I couldn't get enough of, still can't get enough of it. So I turned that into a business. I went around to every person I knew who had a dog, someone down the road, a family member, a cousin, a third cousin, whoever. I was like, hey, just let me take your dog. At least it can't come back any worse, right? And I just started practicing and practicing until I felt comfortable taking my first client dog. First client dog was actually the sister to my Corso. I think I charged $500 for 4 months of training. So went through, taught that dog to sit down, heel, recall. Next one was a little Chihuahua named Lightning from down the street. I think I charged him like $100 for potty training and a recall.
Yeah.
And just slowly started like branching out and just putting fillers out. 'Cause I really didn't know what it was worth. And at the time, it really wasn't worth much, but it was something. And it just kind of got me going. And then as I started doing that more and more, uh, around more dogs, once I got back from tech school and basic training, uh, I did my first semester of college as a marketing major. Made it all the way through the end of the semester, raised my hand for the teacher. I said, hey, when do we get to the practical application? That way I can learn how to market my own, skill set. And he said, oh, that's not till the fourth year. So that was my last day of class. And went out and just doubled down on the pet training. Bought a Sprinter van, started doing in-home lessons, and just trying to get as much experience as I could until we are where we are now. Went from precision dog training, where I was probably doing 30 dogs a year, 24 to 30 dogs a year on my own out of my house, to now as Low Country Canine here in Beaufort. We've got a 30 dog kennel, and we're doing a little over 100 to 150 dogs a year uh, between private lessons, board and trains, group classes, things like that.
Yeah, for sure. That's
Yeah.
interesting progression in training. Going
Yeah.
from your house to an actual facility. So I guess for me, I'm wondering like, how did you get to having your own facility, like a place to train dogs at, and coming out of your home? What was that story like?
So to go back a little bit, I guess before training the dogs out of my house, I was actually training them out of a 2-bedroom apartment.
Oh God.
So yeah, I had a over the top working line German Shepherd, my Tibetan Mastiff, and I just had a litter of 9 working line German Shepherd puppies, along with a newborn son,
Oh,
all in
crap.
that apartment. Yeah, don't. That was not allowed. If
That's
you're
a story
wondering,
for a different time. Yeah,
yeah,
we'll go in detail.
yeah. But I ended up selling one of those puppies to my now business partner. Ended up buying a dog from me. And throughout that process, about a year later, he'd asked to send the dog back prior to me actually getting him. But my son was born with a couple of health concerns and things like that, so I couldn't at the time. So right around the time this dog turned 14, 15 months, his name was Monty. He had Monty and he had another working line German Shepherd. He goes, "Hey man, I know you had discounted training. Uh, can you train these two?" And I just settled down. I was in my house now, and I said, "Yeah, that's fine." He wanted the 30 days off leash. He sent the dogs. I picked them up on day 7. He came down and just happened to be in town. If you can't hear my quotation marks, I was like, "Oh yeah, let me come
Right.
take a look." So I showed him what we've been doing, the healing, the obedience, and he goes, "Hey, I need you to move to Beaufort, and we need to open a kennel up in this area." And I'd been in my house maybe 3-4 months at this point, no time at all. And he's like, "No, seriously, I need you to move your whole family here. Let's get this going." So drove home to my wife, and I said, "Hey, we got to pack this stuff up. We're moving to Beaufort." That was in February of 22. So we're in February of 24 right now. So almost exactly 2 years later, we ended up moving. Came down within our first 6 months. We had 50 dogs in the kennel. About 3-4 months after that, we bought a second property 2 doors down to facilitate more dogs, as the need just continued to grow and grow for pet training in that area. And it really accelerated my skill set as well, because I went from doing 30 dogs a year to almost 20 dogs a month. So
Shit.
as that was happening, I
Yeah.
was getting hands on more and more dogs. I was seeing different pictures, and you'd always get the dog that had a quirky personality or some kind of weird request for training. And I'm not the kind of guy to say no to training. I'll tell you, like, "Hey, this may take me longer. It's not something I guarantee I can do, but I'm willing to try. And I've got the resources around me, the people I can call to kind of help me out. But I'm always willing to try something new with a dog, whether it's aggressive." One lady had asked me to train her dog to wake her up to go to work. I was like, "All right, fuck it. Let's just give it a go, and I'll try my best." And just taking jobs like that really accelerated what I was able to do. And then right around that time, me and you had met, and we were able to take a deep dive with everything you'd learned with your experiences at Lackland, working
Yeah.
with these higher drive dogs and how we could really get them to think and settle into behaviors. And after that, we've just been flowing ever since. Just kind of been rolling through everything: sport dogs, working dogs, pet dogs. And I got a good groove going with that, really expanding our information, our knowledge.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's yeah, it's a wild story to go from, hey, I just moved into my own house, because you purchased your house, right?
Yeah, yep, just bought it.
Yeah, so you just bought a house. It's kind of like where we're gonna keep our roots, and then nope, we
Yeah,
got to get going. I got an investment opportunity. Um, yeah, I will definitely. That's an episode for its own
yeah.
on that process. But
My wife actually
me,
just got pregnant with our second kid then too, so it was
oh
it was
yeah,
a
that's
hot
right. Yeah,
mess.
you just had Malia, or not had her, but yeah,
Yeah,
she
she
was
just
pregnant with Malia. So you
yeah,
had
so she was
Mason.
on the way.
You just came off of all the difficulties with him. Um, with Mason, just for content, man, or context rather, can you just describe? I don't know if you feel comfortable talking about.
Yeah, no, I got you.
All right.
So when he was born, his esophagus wasn't connected to his stomach. The top part ended in a pouch, and the bottom part of his esophagus was actually connected to his lung. So me and him share a birthday on December 23rd. So
Okay. So we
the
know to give
date.
you birthday gifts.
Bet. Yeah, bottle of
See?
whiskey. Go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of bottles of whiskey
Yeah.
for those that are listening. Too easy.
Yeah, but day after Christmas, he was going into surgery. They had cut him open, connect the two. Uh, we thought that was going to be the hardest part we had to overcome. It ended up going really well. Next thing you know, we're back 2 months later because he's got another rare medical condition. I want to say they said the first one was like 1 in a million, and the second one was also 1 in a million odds. So lucky boy, I guess. But
Yeah, we gotta get him lottery tickets, man.
yeah, he had hyperinsulinism, which is essentially reverse diabetes. His body
Okay.
put out too much insulin. So instead of, his blood sugar skyrocketing, he'd be running around the house. You check his sugar and he's at an 8 out of 100. Or, he should be around 100.
Right.
Most people are comatose at that point because he was so young. His body didn't know any different. It adapted that way because we didn't even know that was a problem until he was about 5, 6 months old. So now he's all good. He's all healthy. Everything's gone through pretty smooth. His first steps were actually in the very first dog training facility we opened up in Beaufort, which is kind of funny.
That's
But
awesome. No, that's awesome, dude.
yeah, it's been a good process. But yeah, he's all good to go. But there was a lot happening all at that one time for sure.
Yeah, dude. I know. I wasn't there for that part. Obviously, I met you a little bit after you're kind of on the, we'll say, the downside of that. But I remember you telling me about that. Like, we were just wrapping up the night after training dogs, and I was like, "Holy shit!" And you're opening business, on
Yeah,
top of that. So
yeah, man. The one thing I'm big on is you got to seize the opportunity when it's there. So the second it became available, and I said, "Hey, am I going to regret if I don't do this later?" Right? That's ultimately what the decision came down to. Because I was working a good job, I was making good money. I barely had to go to it. I was doing transportation, but I knew if I didn't go for it, I would always have that what if question of okay, but what could have happened? At the end of the day, I could always come back to what I was doing, but I needed to know where this took me first.
yeah, no, and that's one of the impressive things that I learned about you was, I mean, I have a son as well, but no issues. Uh, His only biggest issue was like his dick was contorted or some shit or whatever. So he had a corrective surgery, but it wasn't life threatening or anything like that.
Yeah.
So that was his biggest problem. I'm like, oh, can he have kids or that? And they thought he was deaf or whatever when he was first born. But anyways, turned out he just had fluid in his ear. But um, but yeah, so competing with that, dude, I can imagine. Hats off to you. I'm glad that you kept pursuing what you believe in. And to me, that just shows how much you believe in dog training and producing a good quality of dog, whether it's pet, working dog, um, sport, as you're entertaining. So, and speaking of sport, where you're at with Apex, the little demon.
All right. So with Apex, he's a great dog. He's pretty much everything I could ask for in a dog. I hope I get another one like him. Uh, but as far as where we're at, I think we're gonna get this PDC. We'll see what we do afterwards. We honestly might just have some fun. He's fun to play with in detection. I'm probably gonna teach him some tracking, and just allow him to work and kind of live his days out. He's coming up on 5 this year, so he's got plenty of time left. But I just want to have fun and enjoy him. A lot of what I did early on with him just caused a lot of conflict for us. A lot of trust issues I built unknowingly, and a lot of behaviors. I thought I was teaching one thing, and I was teaching the opposite, which seems to be the story for most first time high drive working dog owners. Right now, I currently have a young Mal puppy,
Mhm.
Mona, who I'm really liking so far. She's about 5 months. Got her from Knockout Dog Training.
Shout out.
Fantastic little puppy. Yeah, shout out Lindsay. But she's a great puppy. I'm hoping she turns out to be everything I want her to be, and can continue doing sport with her from there. Me and Apex did have some fun though. Last year we did 3 trials. We hadn't trialed at all the first 4 years of his life because we had such a back and forth on outing and healing and secondary obedience. Uh, but last year we were able to get the control to the point where we did a WTE, which is very much an entry level title. Nothing too crazy. It's the bare minimum obedience and bite work. The next title was our WST, which was significantly harder. I mean, the jump in difficulty was insane. It was IGP1 esque, but I did it all. Some of it's off leash, and I did it all in a suit. So you're doing a lot of healing with gunfire, different distractions.
Right.
You're sending your dog on a decoy at 40 yards through gunfire, outing at a distance, coming to pick the dog up. So a lot going on there. It was retrieves, considerably harder. But the most challenging trial we definitely had this year was we went for a title called the Protection Dog 1. And the way that trial went with the WST, we were very routine. We could plan a lot of stuff out. The PD1 was very PSA 1-esque. I walked out on the field and the judge just called things out. Like, there was no direction. There was no prior setup. He had handed some sleeves to people in the crowd to throw on the field. Just a lot going on with that. But honestly, I really had a good time. I got called out at that trial. I think I was supposed to say Foos maybe 5 times. When he started counting, I think I said it 27 times. We ended up passing the obedience. I don't know how. We squeaked by with that one. It was 71 out of 70 needed points for the obedience. And then for the last out and recall, he regripped, and that was all she wrote. So we had a lot of fun with it. It was a good trial. Definitely opened my eyes to a lot of things. And I really, we might go back for it. We'll see. But like I said, I'm not going to push for it. I really just want to enjoy him. He's a great dog. We already kind of created a lot of conflict there. So now I just want him to enjoy the rest of his time and get some free bites and have some fun. Definitely want to knock out our PDC, though. That's our one goal.
Yeah, I'm still, like I said, my background is military, so I'm still leaning. I think we can get the PSA 1 at a minimum.
He
But
could do it.
yeah, I think we can make that happen.
He's
But
definitely
I
capable.
understand what you're saying as far as like it's a giant learning curve essentially.
Yeah.
And being able to just enjoy where he's at as far as training and balancing that with his age and just letting him have a good time. But I do. Apex is a very interesting dog. When I met him,
Yeah, that's a good word.
yeah, we'll say interesting. But I like where he's developed into working with you on that, and we'll talk about that more in detail, like how we met and what kind of tied us in and locked us in to do this. But so far we started out. And I'm gonna use the name. We might have a lot of bleeding. But start out interest in dog or exotic animals rather.
Yeah.
You got the crocodiles are growing a little bit too much, and forgive me, I'm not familiar with the exotic field of animals. So dad tells you, all right, what was that dog shit you were talking about? Like
Yeah.
dog? And he's like, all right, let's do that. And then so you get a dog, you have your pet, you're kind of figuring your way out, getting through it, just like anybody else on your own. Go to Petco, learn some things there. They figure out you're pretty good at adapting to their training system, so to speak. Kind of hire you on. You meet Calvin. You got to shout Calvin out, man. Where's
Calvin
Kingdom Canine?
over at Kingdom Canine, yeah.
All right, so how do we find him on Instagram real quick?
Kingdom Canine Training on Instagram. Yeah, great trainer. Yeah, Calvin doesn't miss a beat, man. He definitely helped me through a lot of things. He's the one that got me comfortable talking to clients in the first place, because that was definitely the most nerve-wracking part.
Yeah, right on. So we got Calvin. You meet up with him. You get trained. You use tools in the background behind the scenes. Perfect. Balanced and fair to the dog. Nothing abusive or anything, but not a part of the repertoire for Petco. And then we move on. We meet Beaver, the decoy, and I've met Beaver before. Like Beaver's
And
pretty
he is
tight.
now one of the owners in Low Country Canine with me as well.
Okay, so
So
he
it's
is a business
me, him,
partner.
and Frank. Yeah.
Yeah, right on. So now you got Beaver, you meet Frank. He kind of funds most of the startup, get your own building, and now we're here training pets.
Yeah. A lot of pet dogs.
Yeah. Um, and so now we're in the progression of things. Obviously, we're trying to move forward with everything. You got your own business. You got your son Mason had some setbacks. Whatever, he's doing well. I love Mason to death. By the way, it's my
Yeah.
dog. It's my boy.
What about Malia, man?
Malia, not so. That might be an episode in and of itself, but Malia,
Hey,
she's completely opposite of Mason. So we're trying to
oh
figure
yeah.
that.
I knew I was
Take,
in trouble. My mom called me today. I'm gonna tell you this earlier, and she goes, "Hey, I see what you were talking about." 'Cause she's got both my kids right now. Spend some time with grandma,
yeah.
and she goes, "This Malia." She's like describing what she was doing. She's like, "She always like that with you," and I'm like, "Every day." She's like, "Hey, Malia might just be a different beast." She's like, "I don't know if I ever dealt with anything like this." I'm like, "Mom, you can't tell me that." It's like
Yeah,
you
well,
can't. I said you can't do that to me.
oh man, yeah, Malia. All right. For whenever she does listen to this shit, I do love
Yeah,
her. Whatever. Like I love your kids for sure. But yeah, I can't. I
Malia's hell
gotta.
on wheels, man.
Yeah, she's a different beast. But so now yeah, you have your second child. You're you got your own business. It's up and running. You run daycare, board and train, and with that behavior modification, some personal protection dogs you sent out, right?
Yep. Yeah,
I know
some
that wasn't
PP
mentioned.
dogs,
And then,
private lessons.
yeah, you're doing private lessons. I know you dabbled in group lessons in the puppy training
Yeah.
arena. So, and I was fortunate to be with you on that. And that was actually, we got to start that back up and running.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that was a good time. Just us interacting. My viewpoint was like listening to people, and you coaching me on how to interact with people and stuff like that. Um, but no, it's been good. You're doing all this. What? How old are you now?
24.
So you're at the age of 24. So that's to me that's impressive to get started on that. And I know I painted like this perfect picture of like, oh, it's going smooth. We'll get
Yeah,
into
that's
the intricate,
fine.
ups and downs and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
overall, you've got a successful business going for you, and that's good. And now we're diving into the untreaded waters of podcasting.
Oh,
So,
yeah. This has
uh,
definitely been fun, though.
yeah, no, yeah, it's been interesting, dude. I'm enjoying it. As we get to wrap it up, I want to know how you came up with the name because that was definitely you. I'll contribute that to you. So, what inspired the name for Working Dogs and Whiskey?
Oh, man. See, this is where it all goes. Every company I've ever had, I'm not like with dog names, I try and be kind of deep. But with the company names, even Precision Dog Training, I think I was sitting down for like 5 minutes. I was like, precision, like, yeah, precise training. I was like, I like that. Precision, done. 5 minutes, right?
Right.
Me and Frank sitting on the phone. I'm like, pet resort, where are we located? Low Country Canine. Boom, done. Working Dogs and Whiskey. I had just got a whiskey set for Christmas, and I was like, you know what? I like whiskey. I really want to start getting into this. So as that started to happen, I was like, okay. Me and you started talking more and more. We were having hours of conversation on the phone, just about dog training or anything dogs in general.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, we got to start a podcast. And I'm big on things that start with the same letter and just sound good, like my kids' names. They have the same initials, MAM.
Oh crap, they do.
Mason, Alexander Moses, Malia, Almina Moses. Like I'm just big on that. It sounds nice. So I'm
Yeah.
like, man, what rhymes with whiskey? Like it'd be cool to drink and relax on a podcast. I'm like, whiskey and dogs, working dogs and whiskey. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I like that. That's something we can kind of get behind. And I had a buddy of mine, Andrew Vanover. He's out of the Air
Mhm.
Force now, but he's in Tennessee. He was practicing to become a tattoo artist. I gave him a brief, very shitty description of what I was seeing in my head. And
Yeah.
next thing I know, within a week, he shows up with his artwork that you guys will see here on the podcast. And I'm like, man, that's phenomenal. Like, that's what we got to do. And you actually made me laugh when you told me the other day it's been my profile picture ever since I showed it to you. And
Oh yeah. Yeah.
here we are now getting the first episodes going.
No, it's been great, man. Yeah, I remember the first time you told me about like you had aspirations to do a podcast, and I'm like, dude, I just wanted to work dogs. Like, I don't really want to talk about this for a living, and whatever. But it's good, man. Like we'll talk about it for sure. I know I keep referencing that, but future episodes we'll talk more, expand about more how we got into being in the public eye. Because for me, it's always been just train the dogs, work with the people, establish good relationships. We're all done. But knowing that we can do a little bit more, and hopefully this maybe leads to something where we can interview people um, and get people on the air
Yeah.
to expand the education is one of my target things, at least for the podcast, being selfish. And I'm supposed to interview, but that's one of my aims for why I want to do this and going outside of my comfort zone is to be able to reach out to other people, other trainers. Um, but for you, what's your mission statement on this podcast or
Uh,
what you
I
want to
think our
achieve?
I think our missions are pretty much in line. Like you said, I want this to be an open forum where we can have conversation about dogs. Dude, me and you have gone deep some nights, like some stuff that will probably live in the archives. But
Yeah,
I want to bring that to light and just help people because I think as me and you have done this more and more, and we're talking to more people and putting the information out there, or helping more. We just see there's a big disconnect, whether it's vocabulary, uh, just different training techniques and thought processes that could be done differently, or we just kind of need to bring everything to the table and have that conversation. So my goal is definitely for this to be an open forum where everyone is invited to come talk and put ideas on the table. And that could be military working dog handlers, it could be pet owners, sport people. One thing I've really come to learn is dog training is dog training. The more pet dogs I train, it seems to help more of the working dogs. The more working dogs I train, it helps with the pet dogs. It really goes hand in hand. You need to understand what is happening with the dog. And if you can't explain the science of it, I feel like you just don't understand it well enough sometimes. And that's kind of what I want to put out there. Some people can, do a really great job, but not maybe necessarily understand why they're doing it. And I'd love to put those different viewpoints out there and bring all those people to the same page where we can use similar vocabulary and make sure we're all on this using the same techniques, or at least being open and honest about how we're doing it, even if our techniques vary.
yeah, and yeah, we're definitely in line. I know we've already talked about this before, but we're definitely in line in that viewpoint of like what we want to talk about, being more transparent about what it is that we do with dogs. Um, and what I'm excited about for me is a different realm as far as dealing with pet dogs and the sport portion of it. So that's where I really like shut my mouth. I'm like, all right, what's going on here? And I rely on you for that knowledge. I know you've been dependent on me for certain things like behaviorally or whatever and all that. But I really enjoy understanding what it really takes to come up in the industry. And then as we talked about before, like motivators to stay in it because not every day is beautiful. You're just playing with dogs and having a fucking great time. This shit
Yeah.
gets exhausting. And
Yeah, that's for damn
So,
sure.
and those are the things that like the conversations between us personally, and now that we get to advertise on the podcast, I'm looking forward to bringing that to light, and hopefully people can get around other learning curves that we had to deal with as far as growing a business or doing or just being in the industry, honestly. And we can
Yeah,
pass on that baton of knowledge and hopefully receive a baton, as we go
yeah,
along with it. But but yeah, it's definitely been good, dude. Like talking to you, knowing your background. Like I want to say we have very different backgrounds.
yeah.
You grew up with animals. I did not grow up with the one single pet. Uh, well, I take it back. We have one dog, Patches, and that's a story. But the one dog my dad allowed. But yeah, but for the most part, we have very opposite backgrounds in as far as our interaction with dogs and stuff like that. But how we were able to blend those worlds and create a community just between you and I on how we view dogs, I think is pretty spectacular. And I want
Oh
to
yeah, absolutely.
definitely share that. But dude, it's getting late. It's let's be honest, it's like two AM.
Yep, 2 a.m. Got a 10
Yeah,
10 a.m. go
and
home.
you have a go home. So for a boarding train tomorrow.
Yeah,
Well, today.
yeah, today, which means I'm probably gonna be at the kennel in 6 hours, which means I need to be up at 5 to let the knuckleheads outside.
Yeah.
So be running off 5 hours of sleep, but Ziggy's good to go. He's ready to get out of here.
Oh, dude, yeah, I'm sure he is. Uh,
Yeah,
not in a bad way, but yeah, he's well prepped and watching today. That was awesome, dude, and thanks for the coaching on Lucy, which Lucy will be an episode, and Ziggy will be an
yeah,
episode on
yeah. They're a special kind of
electronic,
dog.
yeah, electronic training. But anyways, let's wrap it up, dude. How can we reach you? How can we find you? Please, your business and your personal page, if you will.
The business page is Low Country _ canine, and then the personal page is Jonathan D Moses, JONATHAN D Moses _ canine, and we'll be
Awesome.
posting a lot more up there as we go.
Awesome, dude. This is a great introductory. It's good to see or hear rather about your past and everything. So yeah, let's wrap it up. Get some rest. We'll be back at it tomorrow.
Yeah, see you in the morning for this go home, man.
All right, man.